Hello and welcome to Take a Beat. My name is Tirza and I'm the digital pastor here at IES. And this is our third season of Take a Beat. It's an IES podcast where we talk about things so that we can launch back on the beat. So we are recording from the Blue Room, home of IES Teens. And thank you, Pastor Josh, for letting us use the room. And I am here with Pastor Dave and Gigi Kenney. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So you just came back from the States. How was it?
It was there.
It was
Uh,
wonderful. It
yeah.
was great to be with family.
Since our daughter went back in 2015, after that we've always gone for our vacation right after Christmas and spent it there. So it's kind of a rhythm that we're used to, but it was good.
Yeah, we've
The
been
weather was
celebrating
nice.
Christmas now in the States for like the last,
Hey,
since Isabel moved. So 9 years.
yeah.
She's been there, almost 10 years. So the last
Wow.
9 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
So our Christmas is December 28th.
The official Kenny family Christmas.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you're still here to the 25th for Christmas, right?
Right.
For Christmas services. So how's Isabel?
Doing
She's
well.
great. Doing well. Doing well. I'm not sure if she has less wisdom, but she has no more wisdom teeth than
Oh,
pulled out.
they removed it all at once, yeah.
Yeah.
And
I
the
think it's
complicated part was she ended up with bruises on her chin. So she was not real happy with that, but that was from the pooling of the blood. And so it looked like she had been in a car accident so she just, when people would say, "What happened to you?" She'd just say, "You should see the other guy."
And you celebrated your anniversary there?
Yeah,
Happy
yeah, we
anniversary.
did.
Yes.
That was great.
We had hot dogs. So.
Yeah, it's our
Went to
anniversary
Costco?
meal. Costco
Of course.
courtyard,
It's
hot
like the
dogs,
best place.
That is the
bottomless.
best date. Like,
Oh, definitely.
It's
We've done it 2
cheap.
years in a row.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah.
No,
And they're
Costco's
making a big
great.
change. I don't know if you heard this, but Costco is swapping out Pepsi products for Coke products.
Oh,
So now in the Costco food court thing, it'll be all Cokes and Coke products.
I'm not sure if we
I don't know if we
supposed to say-
incidented that.
oh, it's
our
a
product placement. Pepsi or Coke?
I don't know, Pepsi or Coke.
Oh,
Coke.
Coke. Coke.
Definitely.
This could be polarizing for people, but not as polarizing as toppings on pizza.
Yeah.
So today I wanted to talk to you, especially since this is our first episode back. I want to talk to you about hope, because there's a lot of things happening in the world, from like a huge scale all the way to more a personal scale. Even with IES, there's going to be a lot of changes, and so I want to talk about hope because it's something that, like, what is hope to you? Because some people are like, oh, is it like wishful thinking? Is it like what is hope?
Well, let me start off by saying there are a lot of different ways to deal with this, but there is a particular theological precept that we refer to as the hope, and that is the hope that we have that Jesus is coming back for us and that we'll be with the Father in eternity with him. And that's not what we're primarily going to talk about today, but that's the undercurrent for the whole understanding that we do have hope. We always have hope. If hope to a lot of people is, it would be really nice if this happened, it might or it might not. But for Christians, when we talk about hope, it's the assurance that we have that Jesus confirmed our relationship with the Father and our eternity with him through dying on the cross and being resurrected. So hope for us is a foundational understanding God's plan will go through in our lives. And I think that infers, or I should say informs, everything else that we talk about hope, like I hope things this go well, or I hope this or that.
Which there's nothing wrong with that too.
Yeah.
But to me, hope is something like Dave said. When we talk about hope, not in the scripture sense, It's something that's there is a mood of uncertainty.
Mhm.
But I think as a believer, as a follower of Jesus, hope to me is something very certain,
Yeah.
something that's been promised to me and assured to me with because of my relationship with Jesus. I know that that hope that I I I have attained because of my relationship is something certain,
Yeah.
something that is coming for me, and for those who believe in Jesus.
And the other level of hope is like, well, I hope the traffic's not too bad when I'm going home today.
It's great
Yeah.
today.
Oh no, not
Well, it
from
was really
South
bad
Florida.
coming in.
Oh,
So yeah,
very
my
snowy.
my soap group didn't meet this morning because they're still scattered for the holidays, and I thought, oh, this means it'll be not so bad traffic, but it still took us almost an hour and a half to get here.
Okay.
And so, for those of you who don't know, we're talking about an hour and a half travel to go about 7 kilometers. So that's not real fast.
No. Yeah.
And that's one kind of hope, but that's not really what we're here to talk about. Um, it's the kind of hope where people think that a certain kind of outcome would be the best,
Mhm.
and they're not sure whether they'll get it or not. When is this going to be aired?
In a couple of weeks.
I was thinking, there's the Super Bowl in America, and so I think it's
So I hope
yeah,
I
yeah.
hope.
I
I
hope
hope
I
the
hope the
Chiefs won.
the Chiefs win, but I don't really care if they win or not. I mean, I will
I do
cheer for
too.
them, but I might even find myself cheering for the other team who I've forgotten right now who the other team. I guess Philadelphia maybe. Eagles, yeah, the Eagles. And so
We
that's
don't
hope,
have any
but
skin in the
that's
game.
not a real dramatic kind of hope.
Mm.
Yeah.
And I'm just reminded our soap of we're going through First Thessalonians, and this week, at least this week
Mhm.
when we're recording this, it's about like we do not grieve like people who do not
Have no
have
hope.
hope.
Yeah.
And so also like this is we're recording this right after presentation weekend where a lot of people come up and ask for prayer, and a lot of them is specifically for asking for children.
Mhm.
And I've had a lot of conversation with people about praying for something and praying for a long time for
Mhm.
something for God to y- give them a child or for loved ones to know the Lord. And with some of them, they struggle with hope. Like, how do I hold on to hope? Where when do I when do I say, okay, I guess the answer is no. Um, how do you?
So
Ra-
I have to confess, I am really probably the wrong person to be interviewing about this because
This is why you're also here.
I cannot remember a time in my life where I was praying for something to happen and I was feeling like, why hasn't it happened?
Mhm.
And I'm it's not that I'm virtuous or anything, but I think psychologically I've always kind of understood that God has a plan and process in all this, and I don't understand what it is, but what I want, He's not responsible to fulfill that.
Mhm.
Neither is it make any sense for me to try and figure out why he does or doesn't. And I understand why people struggle with it. People have a loved one and they pray for that loved one to be healed and that loved one passes away. I get that,
Mhm.
but I've never felt that.
Mhm.
And so it's a little bit complicated for me. But I think that my answer partly would be based on what hope really is. And that is that Jesus has paid the price, so we're reconciled to the Father, so we will be with him for eternity. So what happens here is only what happens here. And I may not get what I think I should have or what I want, but that's okay.
Mhm.
And that's really I don't really know how to relate to people who feel that burden of, oh, why did this happen? Why did this terrible thing happen to me? And maybe because the Lord has been really gracious to me and I've got a great life. So
I think because I didn't come from the same background as they, so I know how it was to have no hope.
Mhm.
I had almost up to my adult years, um, and feeling hopeless all the time. just not having any hope.
Yeah.
And so when the Lord revealed himself to me and I became a Christian, I think that's one of the things that I'm so assured of, that my position right now, I also cannot, I mean, understand for those people who don't know, who don't have a relationship with God, to feel hopeless. But um, having that, now I am assured of that relationship. I've never felt like, I've always felt like, even though I've prayed for something and God answered it in a manner in which I did maybe the least I expected him to answer, I still didn't. I was not disappointed, because I knew I've always have this thing in my heart, because I have put my hope and trust in the Lord. I know that whatever happens is what He desires to happen, because that's what's best for me.
Mhm.
So in that sense, I I have no worries. So even if I pray for something and it doesn't turn out, it doesn't look like the way I had planned it to be answered, I just know that's what's best for me. So I have no question. I have no qualms as to, why did God answer it this way? Why not the
Mhm.
way I wanted him to? I've never. I just feel like I'm just, I'm just, uh, who am I for God, for me to question what's best for me, to argue with God what's best for me. So in that sense, being hopeless, I understand, because I have experienced that. But my experience with having hope in Jesus is so far greater
Mhm.
and so far reassuring. And in fact, one of my favorite verses, and I hold on to this, and I pass this one, especially every time somebody has a birthday or somebody's discouraged. Those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength.
Yeah.
You will soar like wings, like eagle. And so I hold on to those, knowing that those things are true.
Mhm.
And so God has never disappointed me.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think like what I'm getting from your explanation is when we trust God, I mean it's when we say we put our hope in God, it is trusting in in him and his character, and it doesn't really like whether or not things go our way.
Mhm.
It is the knowledge that he is God, he takes
Mhm.
care of us, and he is
That's
good.
right.
I actually that reminds me of Pastor Nelson Estrada. Um, he talked about being born again and how the understanding of that was believing in God even though you don't see any
That was
signs.
a great sermon. I watched it.
Yeah. Um, and so I like it. That was, I think that was mind blowing to
Mhm.
think about um, putting our hopes in God, not based off of because God is not like a
Mhm.
vending machine.
Yeah.
Put in 2 coins or a certain like or a f or a formula, magic
Mhm.
spell where you put the right
Mhm.
amount of things or make sure the conditions are right, and then he'll give us what we want.
One of the things we were talking about a little bit earlier today, so we're talking with our daughter, and I said, having been a dad, my wife having been a mom, we know that many of the times, maybe even for seasons of the most of the time, no is the best answer we could give,
Mm,
you know. And so when people don't get what they want from God, they need to keep that in mind,
yeah.
that for God to not answer things the way you want them answered, often you can look back and say, "Oh yeah, that was better that way." So,
Yeah,
Mhm.
I think you mentioned this past weekend,
mhm.
where you said, "Okay, remember at a time
Yeah.
when you prayed or you're like, oh, like, can you please just give me this?" Yeah, I was thinking, I was like, "Oh yeah, I prayed some of those prayers." I was like,
Mhm.
it was a good thing God said no.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But let me ask you this: how about like, what would you say to people, especially in your congregation, who are struggling with discouragement? They believe in Jesus, they know the Lord, but they get discouraged.
I think one of the things I would always do in that case is try and find the root of the discouragement.
Mm.
Um, if somebody's there are a lot of people, there are a lot of really godly people who really suffer in life, and I think that's one of the things that we have to confront is often there are reasons for the discouragement. And for those who have a good life, I consider myself to be really blessed to have a good life. Um, I have to make sure that I don't downplay anybody else's suffering. Oh, things aren't so bad, look at what's good.
Mhm.
And you don't do that. But sometimes by talking to people, you can help them see the areas in life in which God is actually doing wonderful things for them, And so, I'm amazed. I've been spending a little bit of time reading some histories and looking at the early church, and really, the early church was so thrilled to be able to follow Jesus, to receive reconciliation with the Father, that they took the fact that they were going to be oppressed and persecuted their entire lives as kind of like, oh well, you know,
Mm.
and Chris Carter mentioned it in a book that we all read a few years ago. They were willing to risk their families, their fortunes, their future, their comforts, everything to follow Jesus. And that was transformative. And I think sometimes we need to make sure that we help people understand the benefit of the relationship that they have, and not in a critical way at all, because people really do suffer, but just help them with that.
I definitely don't ever minimize
Yeah.
people's uh, hurts and disappointments, and many times I think with in the course of our pastoring here, many times those people just need somebody to be there with them, and
Mm.
I think for a lot of people who are in that um, um area where there's just really a lot of pain and suffering, all they need is just somebody they know who's there for them. Somebody who's praying for them. They don't really, sometimes they don't really need the actual answers.
Yeah.
They just want like a place where a place of refuge, a place of support, a place of love and care. And I think that's and just be available for those who have those kinds of needs. So I think that's what we always strive to be at, in a place where when there is a need, we're always there. And sometimes people don't really want so much answers because a lot of times they know the answer. It's just hard to take. But to have somebody with you, supporting you in prayer and just being there to love you and care for you, I think that's a lot for people.
And if we're honest, we'll say that there is a little bit of sort of overwatch from the world into these perspectives, that oftentimes people are looking for things that they think would be good things to have in this world. So success, different things like that. Um, I've had people ask me, "Oh, so and so's in our church, but they don't come to church very often, and da da da, and yet their business is more successful than mine." And my answer is always, "Well, how do you know?
Yeah.
They may earn more money than you. Does that mean it's successful? Uh, you know, uh, how is there? Somebody said, "Well, how come so and so can get away with all of these things, and they're all these things, and yet God doesn't take punishment or something like that?" And I always just say, "Well, do you know anything about their life? Do you know?
Mm.
Are they happy? Do they have a good family? The things that are of real value, are they actually receiving those things? Not necessarily."
Actually, along those notes, there are people who also get discouraged because they think, oh, if God's not answering my prayers, that means I'm not a good enough Christian,
Yeah, that's true.
or I didn't pray enough, or I didn't believe
Use the
in
right words.
use the right words, or I didn't go to church enough. I didn't give enough to the church.
Mhm.
How like how would you address that?
Prayer's not magic. We have this desire for magic, and if I say the right thing, if I do the right thing, God will have to give me what I want. And
Yeah.
that's not ever what prayer is about. We ask because we're supposed to ask,
Yeah.
but asking God for something is a sign of your faith in Him and acknowledging He loves you. But for Him to say no also is an acknowledgement that He loves you.
Mhm.
And so I think that's really important for people to get a hold of, is that, you know, the timing is an issue. Well, I mentioned it last weekend, right? God gives us what we want, what we need when we need it, not what we want when we want it. And knowing the difference will actually deal with a lot of these questions.
I think sometimes, not a lot of people, but you meet every now and then you meet people, they think prayer is like commodity.
Mm.
So I have, or faith, I have this much. I've given it to you, God. Therefore, you have to give me this much in return. And so, and and also we live in a world where everything has to be, everything is fast paced.
Yeah.
So, ready to wear clothes, fast food. So, in our relationship with God, when you ask Him something, it has to be also fast, because everything is fast. Instant here, and so.
Ujek delivery.
And so I think it
Go for it.
bleeds in.
Okay.
It bleeds into our relationship with Him,
Mm.
and but I think people sometimes is so in a place of such desperation that they just want it so badly. And I think one of the things that I encourage, especially your viewers today, if they in a place where they're just desperate for something and God doesn't seem to be in a hurry,
Mhm.
um, that maybe that's a good thing. Maybe if
Yeah.
God answered your prayers in a way that you want it, maybe that's not really so good for you. And you need to maintain that God is God and He knows what the future holds. He's the only one who knows, what's ahead of us, and so to trust in Him is a good thing. Yeah.
You know, when COVID hit and everything shut down and everything else, one of the things I encourage people to do is to look back and see what are the things in their life that God has used to prepare them for this particular
Mm.
time.
Yeah.
And I think this is good for everybody all the time, to look back and ask yourself the question, you know, when I wanted this, what did God answer? How did God answer? How was His answer better than what I wanted? What did I learn through that whole process? We learn more in trials than we do in good times. We learn more in facing difficulties than we do in everything's going well. And so we recognize that if God's long-term desire is for us to grow,
Mhm.
maybe hard times are, nobody goes to the gym and says, well, I don't feel like lifting weights today, so I'm going to do this, but with no weights. And then gets the trainer to come over and lift your hands back and forth for you. I mean, yeah, that would work. You could do a lot more, but it wouldn't do you any good. And then, we realize that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just when you're explaining, I was just thinking, oh, I think I had a specific prayer in college, and if I hadn't like my relationship didn't end, I would have been in Middle America doing absolutely nothing. So I am glad
Yeah.
that
Well,
God
you'd
does.
be cheering for the Chiefs, so very middle America's team.
Yeah,
You better say yes.
Yeah.
no, I do support the Chiefs for this. Mostly because of Don Fitzwater.
Yeah, that's a good reason. It's pretty much us too.
I like what Dave, reminded us that it is through, difficult times that we learn things, not when things are going well. And so, like in the book of James, it says, consider it pure joy
Yeah.
when you face trials of many kinds, because the testing of your faith develops perseverance. So it's a good thing. It makes you mature. It matures you. It makes you grow up.
Yeah.
I have one more question. What would you say if there are people who's listening and they are discouraged? They're struggling between, like, I have hope in God and this, like, oh, why are things not changing? Why is my prayers not answered? Why am I in pain? What would you say to them?
I would say that because when you talk about pain, so then you talk about people who are sick or people who are being persecuted. And that is a whole another level.
Mm,
And in that, I would just say to remind them that this world is not the final answer to anything.
mm,
And so in this world, we will have trouble. That's what Jesus told his disciples. And he told his disciples, all of them who were going to die violent deaths, except John, who was only boiled in oil, right?
only.
So he was talking to where they really were, and he didn't pull them out of that.
Yeah.
So understand that. But the other thing I would say to encourage people who aren't suffering physical persecution, physical pain, would be okay, take a look at where you are and what you're asking for, and see if you can find something else that God may be doing in this time. Like maybe you're having a trial of this or a trial of that or whatever, and maybe God is doing something else for you. If you can identify that character thing that God's doing, maybe it can help you receive where you are.
I'll say amen. I think whoever you are and you're facing difficulty, that um the Lord loves you.
Mhm.
And the Bible talks about that if he did not withhold, which is the best thing that
Mm,
he could ever have given to us, which is his son, how will he not withhold the things that are good for us?
yeah.
So even the things that are you're facing, I don't want to minimize them, but um there there is hope.
Yeah.
You know, the Lord loves you, and he's not finished with you yet. And there is a period where this is a period where you just need to trust that he knows what's best for you.
Okay. And if you are struggling and you're feeling alone, we want to invite you to IES. We're not perfect, but we'll be here with you,
Mhm.
and we want to be here with you. Um,
Yeah,
so
very true.
thank you so much, Pastor Dave
All right.
and
Thank you.
Gigi, for being here and sharing and actually opening our third season of Take a Beat. We're so glad that you're here and looking forward to more episodes with both of you.
Yes,
Sounds good.
sounds good.
All right.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy
Well,
New Year.
thank you so much for listening and joining in on our conversation. And we would love to hear from you, and we would love to meet you. You're always welcome to come to IES online or in person. And we hope that you have a great week ahead. We'll see you next week on Take a Beat.